So what's up with Harvey Adelson? Today I'm focusing on the patriarch of the Adelson family, information we know about him from prior Markel trials and what might be next. Welcome back to La Belle Vie. Today, in relation to the Dan Markel cases, I'm focusing on Harvey Adelson, who's Wendi and Charlie Adelson's father and Donna Adelson's husband. Now, specifically, I'm going to go over the information we know about Harvey and about his potential alleged involvement in the murder for hire for his former son-in-law, Dan Markel. Then I'm going to go over the 3 charges that his son Charlie Adelson was recently convicted of in relation to Dan's murder, and what his wife, Donna, is currently charged and awaiting trial. I also go over Florida law on accessory after the fact. Now, before we begin, I want to stress that Harvey Adelson has not been charged with any crime and is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. In addition, this video is not legal advice, but rather a general commentary on the issues. I encourage everyone to do their own research. Now let's talk about what's up with Harvey. So let's start with motive. Now, generally speaking, one potential motive for Harvey, allegedly, is that he hated Dan Markel and therefore had a motive to have him killed. Another motive, allegedly, is to get Wendi and those boys out of Tally and back in South Florida any way possible. Related to that is financial. So allegedly, Harvey wanted Wendi in South Florida because going all the way up to Tally, 7 or so hours away to see the grandkids was a pain in the neck and was causing a financial impact on his dental practice. So what do we have to potentially support any of these alleged motives? So the first one I'm going to pull up here, and that's Donna's May 3rd, 2013 email. Your father has made numerous trips by plane for weekends and changing the patient's schedules around so that he can continue to spend significant time with the children. Both the disappearance of your mother from the position of office manager and the disappearance of your father from the practice for a significant amount of time has caused a decrease in the practice income and the loss of some patients who feel that it's either not being run the same way as when my mother was there full time, or that my father is unable to see patients with problems and he has referred them to other practices during his absences. So I think that goes to a potential motive for the relocation and the financial, right? Loss of income to Harvey's dental practice. Also in the same email, Donna indicates that Wendi had borrowed a considerable amount of money from her parents and must repay it for furniture, legal fees, moving expenses, etc. My parents have paid all grocery bills up to this point, for which I will also have to reimburse them. Was Wendi paying for anything? Again, financial. Also, this email shows Harvey was involved in the relocation and divorce battle. Right here, Dad said he'd look up any papers tonight or over the weekend that you may need. He even has the info on what Danny had in his IRA and 401k prior to marriage. Geez, was Harvey handling the finances behind the scenes? How would he know that information? Okay, another aspect of potential motive. At Charlie's trial, Wendi's attorney testified that Harvey was at the relocation hearing in June 2013, which of course we know, which was denied with prejudice by the family law judge. So it was both Harvey and Donna all the way up in Tallahassee for a relocation hearing between their daughter and her soon-to-be ex-husband. Seems like that was pretty important to Harvey. Here's another potential aspect of motive, Donna's June 25th email, which was of course after relocation failed, which was signed by Mom and Dad. Here's some excerpts. However, the rest of your life, and consequently Dad's, mine, and yes, even Charlie's, will be affected by how well you can perform act before July 31st. Jibbers hasn't beaten the Adelson family yet. You have a very strong family behind you. Just remember that. Dad and I have done everything we could to try and help you the last 10 months. Now it's time to help yourself. We want him ticked off so he realizes that he could lose control over his kids. We plan to make a financial offer to help him to allow this relocation. You need to work this plan and we'll help you through it so that it may affect how much we'll offer him. Money, money, money. Dad and I have changed our lives this year to support and assist you and the boys in every possible way. Here's another one, Donna's June 27th email, again signed by Mom and Dad. Now, in this email, we have more on that proposed financial offer to Dan to allow Wendi to relocate. Wendi, this is all about negotiating. After consulting with two attorneys who are both excellent negotiators, one of whom we will most likely hire for the financial offer, we are getting the same advice. You must take something from him that he wants. Both attorneys have said that this is how you get what you want. And Donna continues, I'm not saying that we're not going to continue with hiring an attorney to negotiate and make a financial offer. I don't think you realize the type of offer we're considering. We're planning on you, Charlie, and Dad and I as going as high as equal parts in a $1 million offer. That's $333,000 from each of us. We're a team. We can't do this without your help. The attorney who will be doing the negotiating will also lay it on the line for him what the various payment offers would be worth to him in 15 to 18 years when he may want to retire. The amount is huge. This payoff can put him at that point, without any additional income of his own, in the $4 million range. Certainly nothing he'd ever save in 10 lifetimes. Please, Wendi, do your part and stand up to him. Make an effort to do this so that our group offer will stand a better chance at being accepted. Fight for yourself, Wendi. We'll be there to help you. Just don't tell us that what you need to do now is move forward with a sense of peace. That's giving up. I don't believe that's really what you want to do after all we've been through together and when you're literally a few weeks from this all being over. And there she's referring to the upcoming mediation and ultimately the divorce trial. So another evidence of motive that we have potentially is this text here that I'm showing that was on the date of Dan's youngest child's birthday. Now, this was in October of 2013, which was just a few months after Wendi and Dan's divorce was finalized. Now, according to Donna, Harvey finally had to walk outside to lower his blood pressure. And you recall that they left that evening to go back to Wendi's house with just the older son. And finally, for potential motive, we have statements that Wendi made during her police interview the day that Dan was murdered. Now, she told Detective Isom that her parents are very angry towards him, but she said they wouldn't do something like this. She also told the victim advocate that my parents had more reason to dislike Danny more than anyone else. He hurt their daughter. So those are the examples I came up from prior trials and related information to show a potential motive for Harvey. Let me know in the comments below if you have any additional ones. Okay, after motive, what information do we have that could support Harvey's alleged direct involvement in the murder for hire? I'll start with financial because I think that might be the strongest argument in favor of any potential charges involving Harvey. So first, Harvey owned the Lexus that was either gifted or sold to Katherine Magbanua at a very reduced price. Now, we saw from Donna Adelson's arrest warrant that Katie was in possession of an operating 2001 Lexus LS 430 sedan automobile, which was registered to Harvey Adelson and previously used by Charlie Adelson. On January 23, 2016 is the date that the title for the car was transferred from Harvey to Katie and a new license plate was obtained in Katie's name. The motor vehicle records indicate the vehicle was sold to Magbanua for the price of $1,700. And recall that Mary Hall, the state's forensic accounting expert, testified at Charlie's trial that she was never able to find a record of payment of that $1,700 from Katie to Harvey, including no matching withdrawal of that amount of cash from Katie's check or a deposit to an Adelson account for that amount. Another piece of financial evidence relating to Harvey is that Harvey's dental practice, the Adelson Institute, was the entity that was cutting the checks. Donna wrote them, but it was Harvey's practice. And that was from the 2 months after Dan's murder to the last check that was dated on May 17th, 2016. Now, is it reasonable to say that Harvey had no clue that Donna was writing these checks for nearly 2 years? We know from the wiretaps that Harvey was very involved in their finances. It wasn't like he was some dentist that left all the finances to his wife. Also note that the subpoena response from the Adelson Institute regarding Katie's checks was just a simple QuickBooks summary. And this listed the last check as being March 31st, 2016, despite the fact that the subpoena requested all records. Now, we know that the last check Katie received from the Adelson Institute was May 17, 2016, and the subpoena response was in June 2016.
What other records did you review with respect to her employment at Adelson Institute?
The only thing I received from the subpoena was a QuickBooks summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do we see here?
That is a printout from the QuickBooks report for the Adelson Institute.
So this is what y'all received from the Adelson Institute when y'all subpoenaed her employment, or when her employment records were subpoenaed.
That's correct.
What is a QuickBook printout?
It's an accounting software program a lot of businesses use for payroll and keeping track of expenses.
What time period did the printout cover?
This printout covers September 18th, 2014 to March 31st, 2016.
What date range did the law enforcement subpoena request?
The request was for any and all records for her employment.
Okay. Were all of the checks that Katherine Magbanua received reflected on this QuickBooks?
No.
You said the last check on the QuickBooks was from March 31st of 2016?
That's correct.
Okay, when looking at her account, how many additional checks were there after that time that she was paid by Adelson Institute?
She received 3 additional checks.
And when was the last check that she posted according to her bank account?
I believe it was May 17th, 2016.
Okay, but in May of 2016?
Yes.
So if Garcia was arrested on May 25th of 2016, and the last check to Katherine Magbanua per the actual checks was written on May 12th of 2016, they stopped making payments to her after his arrest on May 25th?
It's possible same time frame.
What was the total net amount received by Katherine Magbanua from Adelson Institute from September of 2014 to May of 2016?
It was $17,729, I believe.
$17,729?
I believe so. Look it up.
And did Adelson Institute provide any type of employment application, timesheet, W-2, tax filing, performance valuation, job description, anything like that for Katherine Magbanua?
No, they did not.
Just the QuickBooks?
Just the QuickBooks.
Hiding anything? Another piece of evidence that may directly involve Harvey is the fact that Harvey and Donna were allegedly together in the car when they allegedly dropped off the money on their way to Orlando and then Tallahassee the night of Dan's murder.
Now, who arrived at Charlie Adelson's residence during the time when Magbanua was still consistent with Rivera's residence?
Donna and Harvey Adelson.
Okay,
Objection. What is the objection? Foundation.
Affirmative.
I could rephrase my question, Judge, too. Would that be all right? Okay.
Go ahead and do that.
Was there some evidence in the iCloud involving messages between Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson where she says she is at his house on the evening of July 18th during a time when Katherine Magbanua is still more consistent with Rivera's house?
Yes,
Okay, can you show us that message?
I can.
Okay, so Donna Adelson here says, call us ASAP at 7:12 p.m.
Yes,
And then at 8:59 p.m., she says, outside your house.
yes,
And Charlie Adelson says 10 minutes at 9:19.
correct.
Okay. About 10 minutes from when he sent that text message, so maybe about 9:30 p.m. Is that when he's consistent with being at his house?
Yes,
And according to this message, his mother is already there.
that's correct.
All right, does Charlie Adelson stay at his house that evening?
He does, yes,
Okay, so the location we saw before, he was still there at 11:39 p.m.?
that's correct.
You'll recall that Katie testified that his parents had just left his residence and left money that his mom had washed.
How was the money packaged when you got it? I think you said you got it the next morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It
How was
was-
it packaged?
It was in a plastic. The money was in a plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag, that was inside a brown bag, and then like a grocery bag over it.
And was the money stapled?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Can you explain how it was stapled? Like what size bills and what increments were stapled together?
I believe it was stapled in. I never counted it, but it was like in a stack, and it was stapled in the corner.
Right. Were they $100 bills or something else?
They were $100 bills, and there was some 20s and 50s.
Okay. And was the money damp?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Explain what you mean to the jury.
A couple days after that, I went and I opened the bag and I called Sigfredo and I told him, I was like, there's mold on this money. And he's like, well, blow dry it. And I was like, but why would there be mold on the money? And he's just, I don't know, just blow dry it. So I believe his parents or his mom might have washed the money.
You mean like physically wash the money?
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you think his mom did it?
Because he was always adamant about telling me he didn't have any money in his house. And he told me that his parents had just stopped by right before I got there. So
Okay.
all of a sudden he had money to put in the trunk of my car the
Was the
following morning.
money, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I'm sorry.
Was the money already sorted out and packaged when you first saw it, or was he doing that?
No, it was already stacked and sorted out.
Okay. And did he have to, so he didn't have to go anywhere to get the money? He already had it when you arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it conceivable that Harvey didn't know about dropping off the money when they were in the car together? That was just Donna alone? We also have prior trial testimony that shows the interconnectedness of financial and money matters between Charlie and his parents. Mary Hall's testimony referenced piles of cash and moving cash from one person's pile in the safe to another's. I'll show some examples of that in financial interconnectedness here. And we also have calls between Charlie and Harvey Adelson on the evening of June 2nd, 2014, which was the first rental car that was rented for the June 2014 trip Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera took to Tallahassee. And that was either to murder Dan or to scope out the location. Now I'll show a chart here, which comes from Chris Corbett's testimony in Charlie's trial. And you'll see these calls here. There's also the call from Sigfredo and Katie to Harvey's phone. Was it really just a mistaken call to Charlie? We know that Sigfredo calls Harvey at 5:20 p.m. and it goes to voicemail. And then Katie calls Harvey's number at 7:43 p.m. and that also goes to voicemail. But we also know that at 12:43 a.m. on July 2nd, early the next morning, Charlie talks with Harvey for 11 minutes and 42 seconds. We also have Wendy's police interview on the day of Dan's murder. Now, we already discussed in the motive section the statements that Wendi made to Detective Isom and the victim advocate that her parents were very angry towards Dan and that they have more reason to dislike him than anyone else. Then you'll remember at the end of the interview, Wendi calls her parents to tell them that Dan was shot. And after she gets up the phone, Wendi says to the victim advocate that she was relieved that her parents sounded really surprised. So she said, "At least that's a relief. I was trying to think of who would be angry enough to do something to him. My parents would be angry, but they're not capable of this. Thank God. I really couldn't handle that right now." We also have that Matsuri meeting. You remember that's when Harvey made some interesting statements, including, "That's what Katie agreed with you?" And then he says, "It makes sense. I didn't think they were that smart." Now, about Matsuri as well, the fact that Charlie and Harvey met for dinner on this date, which was April 21st, 2016, was noted in Donna's arrest warrant, including the fact that the dinner took place after a day of intercepted calls between Charlie and Katie, where they were attempting to disguise their conversation using real estate references, such as security property posted incorrectly and wrong tenants for rental property. Katie in this call brings up the one of two scenarios, and Charlie also says it can be one of two things. And then they talk about someone moving in, then word gets out, and then the money keeps increasing. Another aspect to point out is that we know that Charlie, Donna, and Harvey all met together at the Icon in the pool area on May 5th. And that was the day after Bump 4, that 2:09 a.m. text to Donna from the undercover. This information was also included in Donna's arrest warrant. This time, Harvey is present with Charles and Donna as they huddled in a corner area for privacy. Another aspect is Harvey was allegedly fully on board with leaving the country with Donna. As indicated in Donna's arrest warrant, on November 7th, 2023, one day after Charlie was convicted, Donna and Harvey booked flights to Vietnam with a stop in Dubai on Emirates Airlines. And that was to depart on November 13th, 2023 at 8:10 p.m. Of course, as we know, Donna was arrested on the jetway trying to board that flight, and Harvey was with her. And of course, we know from the subsequent search warrants on Donna and Harvey's iPhones and an iPad that a friend of Charlie's called the state's attorney's office on Monday, November 13th, stating that Donna and Harvey contacted them on Sunday, November 12th, regarding travel to the Philippines. The Adelsons advised that they had travel plans to Saigon until November 20th, 2023, but no further plans at that time. The Adelsons were seeking advice for airlines as well as places to stay. Charlie's friend has known the Adelsons for over 10 years and has never had longer than a 5-minute conversation with Donna or Harvey. They found the contact very strange. Harvey Adelson even told the person, "You must not mention to Charlie anything about our plans." So now let's get to the law. First, let's go over first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Again, the charges that Charlie was recently convicted of and of which Donna is now charged. And I thought a good way to go over these charges is to review the jury instructions for Charlie with respect to each one. Now, these jury instructions are based on the Florida Standard Jury Instructions for criminal cases, with a few minor revisions that were negotiated between the parties. Okay, let's start. First-degree murder. So here you'll see, to prove the crime of first-degree premeditated murder, the state must prove the following 3 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Dan Markel is dead. No issue there. The death was caused by the criminal act of Harvey Adelson. Here's where I think the open issues will be. There was a premeditated killing of Daniel Markel. I don't think there's any issue there. And now I'm here flipping to the second page. Look at that. Now, the real key is here, principles. This is the aspect of the law that holds someone accountable for murder, even if they themselves did not pull the trigger. So in other words, this is how Katie and Charlie were held responsible for Dan's murder, even though it was actually Sigfredo that shot Dan. So let's go. Principles. If the defendant, here we're talking allegedly Harvey, helped another person or persons commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if he had done all the things the other person or persons did if. So here are the two things that the state would have to prove and the jury would have to find. The defendant, hypothetically Harvey, had a conscious intent and that the criminal act be done. And also the defendant, hypothetically Harvey, did some act or said some word which was intended to or which did incite, cause, encourage, insist, or advise the other person or persons to actually commit the crime. And here, to be clear, to be a principal, the defendant does not have to be present when the crime is committed. So what do we know thus far that may show that Harvey had that first element, conscious intent that the murder be done? This is where the motive evidence will be important. For example, will a jury believe that relocation of Wendi and the grandkids was so important to Harvey that it would cause him to want Dan to be murdered? Did Harvey despise Dan so much that this had to be done? Were the financial burdens and losses to Harvey of having Wendi and the grandkids 7 hours away, requiring him to spend time away from his practice, even suffering losses as a result of his absence, was that so high that a murder was the answer? We do know that the emails that the family was willing to pay up to $1 million to convince Dan to let Wendi relocate. Or will they attribute much of that motive evidence to Donna alone, that Donna was the one allegedly running the show and Harvey was simply a hapless bystander in all of this? Now, second, what do we know thus far that may show that Harvey did some act or said some word which was intended to or which did incite, cause, encourage, assist, or advise the other person or persons to actually commit the murder? This is where I believe the financial evidence will be key. Now, before we get to financial, we do have two other instances we went through thus far that could meet this. We have the calls between Charlie and Harvey the evening of June 2nd, which again was the date that Sigfredo rented that first rental car for the June 2014 trip Sigfredo and Lewis took to Tallahassee. We also have the voicemail Sigfredo and Katie left on Harvey's phone on July 1st, and then Charlie's 11-minute phone call to Harvey at 12:43 a.m. on July 2nd. Perhaps there are additional calls we don't know about, but again, I think the financial evidence is going to be more important for this. And on that point, here we have a specific instruction on principles when there is a hiring. Here we go. Principles. When active participant hired by defendant. If the defendant paid or promised to pay another person or persons to commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if he had done all the things the person who has promised or received the money did. So 1, the defendant, here hypothetically Harvey, had a conscious intent that the murder be done. Okay, we just talked about that in motive. So 2, he made or promised the payment in exchange for the commission or promise to commit the crime or to help commit the crime. And 3, the crime was committed by Sigfredo Garcia and or Luis Rivera. And again, to be a principal, the defendant does not have to be present when the crime is committed. Now, from all that we just went through, there are a lot of financial ties involving Harvey and the murder for hire payments. Starting with the night of the murder, the alleged dropping off of the moldy cash at Charlie's house. If the jury believes this occurred, then I think it would be necessary to show that Harvey had no clue what was being dropped off. Recall again the evidence of the interconnectedness of the family, at least Harvey, Charlie, and Donna, on financial issues, including those piles of cash in the Adelson safe. it was Harvey's Lexus that was given or sold to Katie. Did he just not think anything about Charlie giving or selling a car in his name, in Harvey's name, to an ex-girlfriend of Charlie? No questions asked? What about the Adelson Institute checks to Katie that started again just 2 months after Dan's murder and abruptly ended not long after the bump? Would Harvey's defense be that he just believed Katie was indeed working for the Adelson Institute, even though she never stepped foot in the office to do anything? Did he just believe Charlie or Donna that this was all above board? So there's first-degree murder. Let's go on to conspiracy to commit murder. Conspiracy to commit murder. To prove the crime of criminal conspiracy, the state must prove the following 2 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. The intent of hypothetical defendant Harvey was that the offense of first-degree murder would be committed. Okay, again, we talked about intent in the murder portion previously, so I think those would be all the same considerations for this prong. And 2, in order to carry out the intent, hypothetical defendant Harvey agreed, conspired, combined, or confederated with Katherine Magbanua and or other co-conspirators to cause the first-degree murder to be committed either by them or one of them or by some other person. Now note, now that Charlie has been convicted, Charlie can be inserted for Katherine. Now, it is not necessary that the agreement, conspiracy, combination, or confederation to commit first-degree murder be expressed in any particular words or that words pass between the conspirators. It is also not necessary that the defendant do any act in furtherance of the offense conspired. So here, the state would need to show that Harvey agreed, conspired, combined, or confederated with Charlie. And I think that would be the easiest. It'd be Charlie to cause the murder to be committed. And here it would be by some other person, of course. This may be where the phone calls between Harvey and Charlie are important. Here, I also think any evidence that can link Harvey with the money that was paid to Katie, Sigfredo, and Lewis is going to be critical. Now, that being said, I do think that there's stronger evidence on Donna on this point, but we also don't know what the state has on other financials. We just know they have thousands of pages of information from all these various Adelson accounts. Maybe there was more to Harvey's big 70th birthday party that we haven't seen yet. And also note that confederation, essentially that means there's an alliance. So I think any evidence the state has that could show that the Adelson acted as a unit or an alliance could be used for conspiracy. What do you guys think? Okay, solicitation to commit murder. To prove the crime of criminal solicitation, the state must prove the following 2 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. 1. Harvey, the hypothetical defendant, solicited, and here I'd put in brackets Charlie Adelson, Katherine Magbanua, Sigfredo Garcia, and or Luis Rivera to commit first-degree murder. And the reason I believe you'd put Charlie in there is because he has already been convicted of the first-degree murder. Now, as shown here, to solicit means to ask earnestly or try to induce another person to engage in specific conduct. Here, the state would need to show that Harvey either asked Charlie or tried to induce Charlie to have Dan murdered. I mean, you could insert Katie in there, but I don't know that the state has evidence linking Katie and Harvey on this aspect. Although I haven't seen anything really specifically on this aspect for Charlie either, but we don't know what the state might have. I do think that the state has more on Donna on this point, allegedly. Now, prong 2. During the solicitation, hypothetical defendant Harvey commanded, encouraged, hired, or requested Charlie Adelson in brackets, Katherine Magbanua, Sigfredo Garcia, and or Luis Rivera to engage in specific conduct which would constitute the commission of first-degree murder. Here, I think for this prong, I think the most likely scenario would be evidence that links the money payments for the murder to Harvey, that hiring part. And again, it's not necessary that the defendant do any act in furtherance of the offense solicited. So that's what we have thus far on those 3 charges that Charlie's been convicted of and his wife Donna is currently facing. Now again, of course, Harvey hasn't been charged with any crime and is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. I just thought it would be interesting to lay out those 3 charges and go through what we know from the prior trials and latest information. Okay, accessory after the fact. A few of you have asked me questions about accessory after the fact in Florida, which is section 777.03 of the Florida statutes, accessory after the fact. So I'm pulling up now the Florida statute on accessory after the fact. And this is the big problem. As it's spelled out in section 1A, this accessory of the fact law does not apply to certain family members who are covered under a related person exemption. And those include a parent, a spouse, a child, a grandchild, a grandparent, or sibling by blood or marriage. Now, extended family members can be charged, including if the person was an uncle or an aunt or cousin. And also note, as you'll see in 1B, this related person exemption does not apply to offenses against children. So no Harvey, guys. That also means no Wendi for accessory after the fact. Now, family members that would be part of this exemption could still face criminal liability under a Florida's aiding escape statute, which doesn't have a family member exception. I'm showing that here. Basically, anyone who ever knowingly aids or assists a person in escaping, attempting to escape, or who has escaped from an officer or person who has or is entitled to the lawful custody of such person is guilty of a felony of the 3rd degree. So it's basically an obstruction of justice statute, and I just don't see it playing here. I mean, first of all, Charlie would never escaped. I mean, I think although we could say from listening to these jail calls, it sounds like he wished he would have, allegedly, of course. Now for Donna, Harvey wouldn't have knowingly aided or assisted her, I think, because he didn't know about the warrant at the time that Donna was walking down that jetway and she was arrested. So I think, in other words, he would have had to have known that Donna was then entitled to the lawful custody of an officer and nevertheless helped her escape. I just don't think this is going to apply. This really applies to fugitives. So here, the fleeing would be used more as evidence of potential guilt, not a separate crime. So that's what's up with Harvey, at least for now, and based on the information we have from prior trials and the latest information with respect to Donna's arrest. Perhaps there's more that the state has, which, as we saw in Charlie's trial, was definitely the case for a number of matters. We also have those iPhones and an iPad that were seized from Donna's person and Harvey's home. What information could be contained on those devices? It's going to be interesting to find out. Until then, we have Donna's case management conference on January 9th. It will be interesting to see if Donna has new or additional counsel and whether she will request a speedy trial. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.